Good morning. There are new threats from both Iran and the United States, new tension across the Middle East and beyond, and climbing uncertainty in the aftermath of the killing of Iran's top general. NATO is holding an emergency meeting today on the future of the Canadian-led military mission in Iraq. This morning on our program, we have all the developments for you, beginning with extraordinary scenes of grief and anger from Iran. That is Tehran this morning. Video from Iranian state television showing mourners by the thousands filling the streets of the Iranian capital. State TV says, in fact, it is millions of people who are taking part in the funeral procession for Qassem Soleimani, the top general who was targeted in that airstrike ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump. Soleimani, head of an elite division in Iran's Revolutionary Guard and the general who spearheaded the country's military operations across the Middle East, is seen as a national hero by many Iranians, and experts considered him second only to Iran's supreme leader in power and influence. That is Iran's supreme leader there, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, appearing to weep as he led prayers for Soleimani. With the prayers come new vows of retaliation. The general's daughter today telling mourners he will be avenged, and including Israel in the new threats against the United States. We begin what will be extensive coverage this morning from the Middle East, and Rebecca Collard with us from Beirut to begin. Let us lead off, Rebecca, with those scenes, those incredible images, what we are seeing and hearing from Tehran this morning.
Yeah, Heather, as you said, these are incredible images coming out of Tehran via the state broadcaster this morning. Hundreds of thousands or possibly millions of people in the streets mourning the death of Qassem Soleimani. And some people saying this may be the largest funeral in the country since the Islamic Revolution there in 1979, that the numbers could be as large as when the country's previous supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, died in 1989, which just shows you exactly how significant this death is being felt in Iran. And I think, Heather, there is a bit of a sense that this is some sort of a rally around the flag moment. And I think you mentioned this as well, that even people that may not have been hugely supportive of the country's Islamic regime, that they are now possibly in the streets, because I think that this assassination has not just upset people who support the Iranian government, but also those who feel that this is an overstep by the U.S. And we see at the funeral the country's current supreme leader, actually, as you said, weeping as he prays over the body of Qassem Soleimani. So just extraordinary images. And the other thing I would mention, Heather, is a very significant political development yesterday on top of all of these threats coming from Iran's political and military leadership. The country saying that they are further backing out of their commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal, that deal that the U.S. has already backed out of, saying they're going to reduce their commitments. It seems almost entirely, though they've also said that they will allow access they will continue to cooperate, with the International Atomic Energy Association. So we're going to search today for clarity on that, Heather.
Okay. Rebecca, as you're reporting to us from Beirut, we are looking at these live pictures coming in from Iranian state television. These are the scenes that appear to be drone images coming in of this funeral procession. And as you said, hundreds of thousands and indeed millions reported as they carry posters and flags and participate in the funeral rites for General Soleimani. Now, you're talking to us from Beirut, and as we know, of course, Rebecca, Hezbollah worked very closely with Soleimani. What kind of response are we seeing there and indeed across the region?
Yeah, Heather, let's start in neighboring Iraq, because I think that that's the most significant reaction we've seen. Yesterday, the parliament in that country passing a resolution essentially to kick all foreign forces, and of course that would include Canadian troops who are in Iraq, out of the country, and of course significantly the American ones. That's not a binding resolution, Heather, but it does send a very clear message to the U.S., who has invested billions of dollars and thousands of American lives in trying to stabilize Iraq and maintain influence in that country. So that was very significant yesterday. But also over the last few days, we've seen several attacks, Heather, on U.S. targets in Iraq. So several rockets on the well-fortified the green zone in Baghdad, where the U.S. embassy is, and also a bases where there are U.S. personnel. And those are likely, of course, coming from Iranian-backed militia in Iraq. And then let's just move quickly to Lebanon. Here yesterday, we had a funeral procession also for Soleimani, thousands of people, and comments from Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, saying that it is the responsibility of all of the resistance. And Heather, by resistance, he means militia like Hezbollah, like Iraqi militia, to avenge the death of Soleimani. And I think that as we move forward, we look what's going to happen in the next few days, Heather, we're likely to see this response, this retaliation come rather than from Iran directly, but from one of these allied or proxy militias, Heather. So, very tense times, I think, in the region.
Rebecca, we will turn to you often. Thank you so much for beginning things for us this morning. That is Rebecca Collett as she speaks to us live in Beirut, watching the region for us. Let's turn next to Europe, where NATO ambassadors are racing to Brussels today for that emergency meeting I mentioned. They're set to discuss the future of a key mission in Iraq, one that, as Rebecca just reported, was suspended this past weekend as Iran's threats escalated. Carolyn Dunn is in our bureau in London to set that meeting up for us this morning. Carolyn.
Well, Heather, NATO members are so concerned about this security situation that they've called an emergency meeting of the ambassadors from the 26 member countries. All of NATO's training missions in Iraq have been suspended. That's to protect personnel on the ground from possible attack, maybe even probable attack. The situation became exponentially more dangerous for foreign troops after the assassination of Iranian General Qassem Soleimani by a U.S. airstrike. The vows of retaliation are really leaving foreign troops in harm's way. In fact, yesterday, Iraq's parliament voted to expel foreign troops from the country. So that leaves a real question mark just how tenable the Canadian-led mission in Iraq to train Iraqi security personnel really is. And you really can't forget the purpose of that mission. It's basically to solidify security in government institutions to a point that they can themselves stop a resurgence of ISIS. So immediately, it's just too dangerous for those NATO troops to operate. But in the longer term, there's a really high chance foreign presence, including the 500 or so Canadians that are on the ground, are going to be kicked out or withdraw. So where does that leave the Iraqis as far as their ability to quell ISIS? It is a very big concern, not just for Iraq, but for the entire region. And this meeting today will be just the beginning of talks about what to do next. Canada is, of course, joining other world governments in asking for calm. You know, they're saying that the safety of Canadians on the ground is the priority, but really it's unclear about how any of this is going to play out. We may know a bit more when those NATO ambassadors talk after their emergency session today, and we're going to follow that for you, Heather, and bring you the latest.
Carolyn, we will be definitely speaking as well on this later. Thank you very much as we begin our coverage in London with our Carolyn Dunn.